Have you ever trusted a plan so precise, so streamlined, that failure seemed impossible? That's exactly what a Ukrainian team thought when they prepared to destroy 3 hidden North Korean artillery guns in 91 seconds. But when the electronics died and targets disappeared, the plan collapsed. What replaced it wasn't neat strategy or high-end technology. It was pure human adaptation. Young operators fighting static, rerouting signals, and salvaging hope out of chaos. This isn't just a battlefield story. It's a lesson in what happens when human judgment collides with the limits of technology. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. What happens when a plan priced in perfection meets a battlefield measured in chaos? That's exactly what defined the so-called 91-second annihilation. The strategy was sharpened down to a single objective: remove 3 Cox artillery pieces in less time than it takes most people to boil water. The design was blunt in its simplicity. 3 rockets, 3 guns, total erasure. Nothing less, nothing lingering, nothing left behind. Operators believed it would be swift, cold, and absolute, a kind of mechanical certainty delivered by precision firepower. On their monitors, it looked like a video game scenario where the outcome was already locked in, and all they had to do was follow the script. The Cox artillery they were facing wasn't light. These weapons threw shells that could tear through reinforced steel bunkers, and in the wrong conditions, they could break open entire defensive lines. Every second they remained firing meant Ukrainian units in a wide area stayed exposed. Taking them out quickly was more than symbolic. It was survival. That urgency gave the 91-second mark its intensity, because the HIMARS crews knew time wasn't on their side. They poured their belief in the idea that speed and precision would overwhelm the size and strength of the guns. The math looked flawless. The HIMARS launcher became the iron fist. A drone circling overhead became the eye. One found the targets. The other struck them. The operators fused the two into a cycle of certainty: spot, fix, finish. Timers ticked down, coordinates locked, warheads primed. There was no doubt in the room that the next few moments would erase a threat capable of pouring devastation for miles. Every calculation confirmed what they wanted to hear. In their heads, 91 seconds of action would erase hours of threat. The first launch rose with a savage sound, the kind of pressure that rattles ribs even inside reinforced shelters. On their screens, operators tracked the rocket's streak, the line connecting destruction to calculation. Confidence was total. The strike team carried no plan B. Why would they? In modern fire control labs, the margin of error is shown in inches, not meters. When lives are measured against centimeters, faith in perfection grows quickly. At that moment, they saw no reason why the system would betray them. But betray it did. The initial rocket landed not on the exact coordinates of the Cox gun, but off by 12 feet, a small distance on a map, yet enormous in real consequence. Instead of vaporizing the artillery, it damaged it. The barrel twisted, mechanisms buckled, but the structure still lived. Military history is full of similar details. An engine not destroyed, a battery still able to fire, and suddenly, an enemy you assumed was gone continues to breathe. That 12-foot error turned absolute elimination into partial crippling, and partial crippling still left danger alive on the field. The shock in the command room was instant. Operators had sold themselves certainty, but what they received was hesitation. Being close enough may work in theory, but close enough on a battlefield means the gun can still roar back. That first strike showed a hard truth. Precision is only perfect until it fails. It can miss by so little, but that little can shift the entire tempo of a fight. The plan that seemed invincible now had cracks. All eyes drifted to the second launch sequence with less confidence, knowing they were now improvising without admitting it. The perfect plan did not create perfect results. Perfection missed by inches still remade the entire fight. And yet, the jolting flaw did not arise only from that 12-foot miss. The real unraveling came from a weapon they couldn't see, drifting between signals in the air: electronic warfare. How do you fight when the only eyes you have suddenly go blind? At HUS 45 seconds, the operators saw their live drone feed collapse into a mess of static. One moment, they had a steady real-time view of enemy artillery dug into the tree line, and the next, they were staring at flashes of gray noise eating across the screen. The room fell silent as crews realized what had happened. Russian electronic warfare had found the drone's uplink, pumping enough interference into the channel to shatter video into useless lines. The kill chain that depended on smooth vision now had none. In less than a minute, eyes that had guided the opening strike with absolute clarity had been ripped away, and the plan built on certainty collapsed into blindness. The operators faced a brutal choice: fire again without seeing, and risk hurling million-dollar rockets into empty soil. Cancel the mission and leave the Cox guns still alive, ready to fire back into Ukrainian positions. There was no ideal move. Ammunition was scarce, and every wasted launch strained an already thin supply line. But standing down meant exposing brigades of infantry to artillery fire that could break them apart. In those few seconds, what looked clean on paper became an agonizing gamble. Guidance officers whispered options, while battery commanders froze, trying to weigh which outcome carried the least damage. Every decision carried punishment, and none offered safety. On the back row of consoles, the younger signal specialists scrambled in panic. Their job was usually routine, watching channel health and maintaining clean data streams. But now the screens filled with interference, meters swung into red, and alarms bled across the desks. Some shouted that jammers were sweeping broad bands. Others spun through channels, desperate for leaks in the wall of noise. It was the first time many of them had faced this level of disruption inside a live strike. Sweat rolled from under headsets as they moved faster than they could think, trying to answer commanders, demanding a solution in seconds. Out of that pressure came desperate improvisation. A technician found an obsolete side channel built for low bandwidth failover. Rerouting data through it barely worked, pushing scraps of imagery that stuttered on the monitor. Instead of smooth video, the crews received freezing frames of thermal outline. Human figures and machinery showed not as clean shapes, but as blotches of heat shifting on a canvas of black. The clarity of high-res optics was gone, replaced by a handful of glowing smudges dancing across the screen. Everyone knew how absurd it was. Precision rockets, guided by some of the most advanced military software in existence, were now aiming off fragments that looked like crude sketches. It would have been bad enough if the guns still sat still. But by now the Cox crews were moving, dragging their equipment deeper into cover among the forest. What had started as an easy map of fixed grid points was transforming into signatures that blinked into view and vanished again into the canopy. Each second the targets moved, the chance of landing a hit dropped lower. Every officer in the room felt the timeline breaking in their heads. If they waited longer, the artillery would escape. If they fired instantly, the rockets might strike nothing at all. Yet from these blurry frames, targeting officers traced patterns. They froze images, guessed movement arcs, and stitched together a provisional map. It wasn't certain, but it was something. Orders went out, coordinates updated, tubes reloaded. 2 final launches thundered, disappearing into the night. Moments later, the horizon lit with catastrophic blasts. Not only had the calculations been enough to track them, but detonations confirmed that both remaining targets were destroyed. Modern war does not reward the side with the cleanest plan. It rewards the side that adapts when plans collapse. A system can jam, a rocket can miss, a drone can fail, but the outcome depends on the people who refuse to freeze. So here's the question. Should nations spend billions on perfect machines or invest in training fighters to improvise when those machines falter? Let me know in the comments what you think. Wars are never won by flawless design. They are won by humans willing to salvage fragments of hope in seconds of chaos.